My dear friends, this weekend we celebrate the 32nd Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year B. The readings invite us to reflect on the depth of our piety, faith, and the virtue of generosity. The characters through whose experience the readings speak to us this weekend are the scribes and the widows. While the scribes in this context represent vain piety, the widows represent vulnerable but trusting, generous, and hopeful disposition. The first reading from the book of Kings, chapter 17, stretches back to the time of universal famine in Israel during the reign of King Ahab. Now Elijah is caught in the middle of the divine intervention against Ahab as the nation is struck with drought and famine. So fleeing from the wrath of Ahab and Jezebel, Elijah goes to a deserted place where God provides for him by sending ravens to feed him. However, the Wadi Cherith has now dried up because of the drought. So God instructs Elijah to go to a Sidonian town of Zarephath, where a widow will feed him. Not only is Zarephath a Canaanite city in the outskirts of Israel, but how is a widow able to provide for Elijah? Because widows were among the vulnerable groups in the society identified by the Mosaic law to whom one must give protection instead. Others included the orphans and the strangers in the land. Now, as a result, when Elijah approaches the widow for food, she describes her situation with despair. She and her son are barely surviving. In fact, she's about to prepare her last supper. Despite her desperate narrative, Elijah urges her not to be afraid. He asks her to prepare a cake for him before preparing something for herself and her son. Although Elijah's request comes with a promise that jar of meal and jug of oil will not fail her until the famine was over, the woman had the choice to choose what to do. Now she chose to believe what the prophet said to her. And obviously, God's provision was given her just as the prophet had foretold. At face value, this narrative sounds like a bargain. But a closer listening points to the irony of the story. The widow, who is a foreigner, trusts the words of the prophet of a foreign god, then serves him first before herself and her son. St. Ignatius of Loyola describes selflessness as a life of humility, unconditional love, and service for God and others. Thus, to be selfless is to be a person for others, by caring about and noticing others. The widow's attitude displays selflessness, faith, and hope. Moreover, what makes these virtues to be more notable is because she was a foreigner. Thus, her action teaches that the practice of selfless actions guided by personal faith brings the experience of fulfillment. The gospel text this weekend presents another widow in contradistinction to the scribes. Although both the scribes and the widow express their faith in a religious setting, they do it in differing ways. The question is, how clearly do the scribes and the widow in this context with their offerings see things? The scribes seek public esteem and offer their gift from their surplus, but the widow seeks fulfillment and offered her gift from what she needed. But there is more to faith than religious profession. My dear friends, the coins of the widow represent more than money. They represent the gift of oneself and the art of living the faith in concrete acts than religious performance. The coins represent presenting to God all of who we are and all that we hope to become for God and for the world. Thus, it is not much the act of giving as it is the state of being. There is a beautiful song by Jude Nnem, a Nigerian Catholic composer, which relics explains the offering of the widow as the offering of herself. Take and sanctify these gifts for your honor, Lord. All that I am, all that I do, everything I will ever make, take my life and take my all. Everything I will ever make, all that I need, all that I pray, everything I will ever have, take my life and take my all. Everything I will ever have, all that I dream, all that I crave, everything I will ever be, take my life and take my all. Everything I will ever be. My dear friends, offering in this sense is something other than prayer, tithes, confession, fulfilling Easter and Sunday obligations. It is the gift of oneself. The widow's selfless offering and trust in the substance of what she hoped for align with Christ's total self-emptying. Christ offered one sacrifice, that is, himself, to take away the sins of many and to bring salvation to all who await him. Dear friends, did you know God isn't interested in our money? Although the church needs the money to pay bills and help the poor, God wants more than money. God wants you and I. He wants our hands, our gifts, our time, our treasure. Therefore, each time we come to Mass and empty ourselves before Him, He fills us with everything to use for the world. Francis de Sales says, true devotion is the love of God in the highest form. True devotion is when charity reaches that point of perfection wherein it not only causes us to do good, but to do it earnestly, frequently, and readily. Every generosity at one end is a sacrifice at the other end, and we are called to do both. May God bless you.